You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey there, B&B fans. It's Belinda from Soap Dirt, and I want to talk to you about your frustrations with this Eric Forrester deadly medical storyline. It seems to be all over the place. You know, they're not using specific terminology. They used the word cancer once out of Luna's mouth, of all people, and then someone, maybe Brooke, said oncologist, but they've been vague for months, and now we have Eric in the OR crashing, and then we have his family members outside talking about what is this treatment, and it's complicated and then kind of a vague explanation. So here's what I want to dig into for you today. Is all of this just BS? Is it nonsense and the writers are just flipping through a medical journal or WebMD and just picking out words at random? Or is this actual, real medical science? I have answers for you, actual answers that you need, maybe you want. I'm going to unfold it up for you and explain actually what is going on. If you haven't already, please click subscribe. Now let's dig in. So what's funny and yet not funny, because this is life and death, is that Thorne Forster was asking all the right questions on the most recent episode of B&B. That was after he very rightly raged at Ridge Forrester for not calling one damned person before he decided to unplug Eric and let him die. Shouldn't all the family that's at the house have been welcomed to the hospital to say their goodbyes? No, like 3 people got to say goodbye for no reason. Ridge was being insensitive and impatient and just, horrifying if you think about it, as a brother to not, and as a parent to not let the kids come and the grandkids. It's just awful. And Thorne was right to tear into him. So right as they were about to unplug him, Eric's eyes fluttered and Ridge gave in, consented to Finn's experimental procedure, again, without consulting his siblings. He's just being a dictator. Heavy emphasis on the dick part of dictator, in my opinion. Thorne asked about the procedure and that they were doing on his dad, and Brooke said, it's complicated, which is not an answer. And then Steffi gives a tiny bit more info saying that one aspect is rebuilding granddad's blood using healthy cells. It's kind of like immunotherapy. So I want to speak to this issue before I dig deeper into the medical situation we saw in the operating room that turned scary and left Eric crashing at the end of the last episode. I keep seeing in the comments people saying it's illegal to perform surgery on a relative. No, it's not illegal. I did the homework. You guys know I'm a research nerd. There is no law saying you cannot practice medicine on a family member, including surgery. The American Medical Association's ethical guidelines say you should not practice medicine for very specific reasons, just being too close to the case. But they also say that in case of emergency or when there's not another doctor, that you should. The big guideline is about pain management. They don't want doctors writing prescriptions for pain pills to family members and friends. That's the big deal, really. That's the focus of the whole ethical thing, really. And the AMA says it applies to immediate family primarily. Finn is not immediate family. Immediate family, if you don't know, would be Eric's children, his wife, if she were still alive, or if he had married Donna, and his parents, who are long dead. Bridget is the only one in the operating room that's violating the AMA code of ethics because she is his immediate family. She absolutely should not be in there. Finn's okay because he is not immediate family. I saw someone else ask, since when did Finn become Eric's doctor? They actually addressed that. Dr. Colby, Eric's doctor, turned the case over to Finn and gave him all the files. Finn said that like 2 days ago. So yes, he is now Eric's primary doctor for this medical matter. All right. Now, let's talk about what they were doing to Eric. So I had to do some Googling. You guys know, research nerd. They had his abdomen, or they were doing something abdomen, chest cavity area. You could see they were operating in the middle of his body. So I assume they were going after a tumor or a clot or something, probably a tumor, because the immunotherapy procedure itself does not involve cutting open the body like that. It doesn't. I did my homework on that too. During surgery, Bridget said that the hope is that the manipulated cells attach to a particular protein. Boy, was that a pain in the butt to research, but yes, I found it. There was a whole lot of mumbo jumbo. I read a bunch of articles. I learned more than I wanted to from JAMA, the Journal of the AMA. There is a type of protein that regulates the growth of tumors, and it can be triggered to shrink the tumor. So they are aiming at having these cells that they are going to put in to trigger this protein to actually shrink the tumor. And there are several procedures that can help this, and it's definitely cutting edge science. But them cutting into his body was not immunotherapy. And maybe they were taking out some of the tumors, but what they were doing was actually not the treatment. The surgery part was what was weird for me, but, they wanted to show them cutting. So then Finn asked for a femoral suture. I recognize both those words right away. Suture means to stitch up, and femoral is the artery that runs down your leg. So I looked up procedures where they go in through the femoral artery. They do it for cardiac catheterization, which is heart stuff, which Eric doesn't need. But there was one thing that sounded about right for a femoral invasion. And it's important because of that machine that we saw off to the side they specifically showed. All right, I'm going to tell you this complicated word, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. Those are 50-cent words, I know. It's called ECMO for short, ECMO. That's where they take the blood out of the artery, they pump it into this heart-lung machine to remove the carbon dioxide, and they reoxygenate the blood, and they send the oxygen-rich blood back into the body. ECMO doesn't treat or cure diseases, though, according to the Mayo Clinic. What it does, it's a bypass. It reoxygenates the blood manually so the heart and lungs don't have to do it. It lets the heart and lungs rest and heal. It's only used in critical conditions like Eric's, where the organs need to have a break to recover. It's used with patients that have conditions of the heart and lungs, including pulmonary embolisms, respiratory failure, etc. And even though they still haven't given us the name of Eric's cancer, he does clearly seem to be in respiratory failure because he's hacking up blood, struggling to breathe, and he's on oxygen. So another source, the National Institutes of Health, said ECMO can be used for oncology patients, which Eric is, to help those with solid tumors, with respiratory failure, and hematological tumor patients. We don't know what form of cancer he is, but this actually does fit, and him being a solid tumor patient explains the surgery. ECMO can also be used during surgery. What's not clear at all was what sort of surgery they were doing on Eric. It looks like the ECMO was being done during some kind of upper body cavity surgery, maybe in his lungs. So in terms of medical accuracy, that was a dialysis machine that they had whirring nearby. I'm assuming that's what they had in the props department because it doesn't look like an ECMO machine, which is the procedure that he's having based on the description and just what fits. Dialysis is for kidney failure patients and those with end-stage renal disease. It is absolutely the wrong machine for Eric. It would not be used in his case, but they probably thought they're going to show this piece of medical equipment and nobody would pay attention, but they should know better by now. We pay attention. So immunotherapy, which is what Steffi said this is like, is given through an IV or an injection under the skin or into a muscle. That was not what we were seeing. So I'd have to assume Finn was going after a solid tumor. Many cancers form solid tumors, basically the kind of tumor you can cut into. It's tangible. It's a lump, right? That's what I feel this surgery was about. But in the case of a blood cancer like leukemia, there are no solid tumors and they don't really use ECMO in those cases. In those kind of cancers, basically cancer cells are messing with the production of healthy blood cells or bone marrow. So the surgery indicates tumor because immunotherapy isn't done through a surgery. Nothing that they talked about had to do with surgery, and then they rushed him into surgery. So it's kind of weird. Honestly, though, despite how annoying it's been for Bold to be so vague, I think what they did on Thursday was pretty spot on, except for the piece of equipment, aside from the dialysis machine. So just real quick, I'm going to show you guys, here's a look at an ECMO machine and a dialysis machine side by side. So you can see real quickly that they look drastically different. And then the next photo is a screenshot from Thursday's Bold episode, it was the machine being used in Eric's surgery room. It's definitely a dialysis machine. I'm not a medical equipment sales rep, but I've watched enough Grey's Anatomy to know the difference. I've actually seen ECMO machines on there, but this is not an ABC soap. It's a CBS soap. If it was an ABC soap, it was General Hospital. They probably could have borrowed an ECMO from the set of Grey's. So the upshot is, while Bold is being very vague and weird about his diagnosis for weeks and weeks, they're actually using some real world science when it comes to Eric's surgery and treatment. When I started poking around into this ECMO and the immunotherapy and stuff, I actually found some experimental things and some cutting edge things that it sounds like they are touching on. I was pleasantly surprised based on my research that it looks like they are finally touching on some real science in the most recent episode. That's everything I have to say. So in terms of it being medical nonsense, up until this point of surgery, I do think it's been nonsense. Once they hit the hospital, we're actually seeing solid, real science. And so I applaud Bold for that. I don't applaud them for the weeks of the BS, but I am applauding what they're doing right now in the hospital. It is spot on, and I'm quite certain we're going to get a Christmas miracle. Friday looks bad. He was crashing on Thursday. I think Friday's going to still look bad, but going into next week, we're going to get a Christmas miracle. Things are looking better. Buckle up. It is going to look bad for a while, though. All right, that's it. Please click subscribe if you haven't already, and definitely drop your comments on your likes and dislikes with this storyline and where we're at now. On Friday's episode, we'll see more of Finn and unethically involve Bridget fighting to save Eric, and I do think they will. So please be sure to come back soon for more on the CBS soap, because we're here talking Bold and the Beautiful 7 days a week. Stay tuned, and thanks for chatting with me. This is Belinda from Soap Dirt.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.